Hey, everyone, we're back here for another episode of Schmoedown. And as you can see by the title of the video and our overlay here, we are talking about the wild man, Josh Macuga. Macuga is an interesting character. I guess to say the wild man is an interesting character. Josh Macuga is definitely one of the most entertaining competitors we've ever had in the Schmoedown. But Ryan, you are the host, so let's get this started talking about the wild man.
Well, I do appreciate that. Thank you, Brandon. I mean, honestly, all three of us, I consider ourselves like the host of this show. I love that you did the introduction. But yeah, we are definitely the wild man, Josh Macuga. I mean, you guys better be prepared for a time because let's just say I came prepared. I got myself some alcohol, got myself some White Claws for chasers when we get into Josh Macuga. But for right now, we're going to be straightforward talking about this guy. This dude's career is legendary throughout the Schmoedown. He was there through the first inception of the Ultra Schmoedown tournament. He has been a huge staple of the Schmoedown. I mean, this guy's given us so many great moments, but I don't want to get too ahead of myself. I mean, Ben, your thoughts on Josh Macuga as a player? I mean, come on, give us the juicy deets. give us your flavor.
Give him the deets.
He's not the best player, but my God, he's one of the most entertaining players we have. From the Blue Fairy incident to him in his lucky streak, his wildness, it's epic. What can you say?
You nailed it completely. His wildness. Jesus, if there is one person out every Schmoedown competitor who you could pick to say, like, you know, of course, with this new season, as you saw with the Star Wars tournament, and especially with the live events, everyone's there to play. They're taking this down like very seriously as a huge sport. But Josh Macuga, even though he is a sports guy, he is there, like you said, for that entertainment value. The moment his music plays, the moment you see him pop through that curtain, he's there with all smiles, with a bottle of whiskey in his hand, and he's going to give you that Macuga dance that Christian and everyone at the desk loves to see. And he's always coming out in such colorful outfits, either with his red shirts, his pink suits, his money pants. Like, he's a colorful personality. I mean, so much to say about him.
Yeah, Macuga. Macuga is the first competitor that I can think of that really he had fun playing. Like, seasons 1 and 2, for me personally, just feel like a completely separate thing. For me, the show really starts with season 3 at Collider, because that's the current version of the show. It's when they truly, most of the rules are about the same. There's a few things that they've added since then, like challenges and JTEs and stuff like that. But Josh Macuga was there from the beginning. We have not seen Josh Macuga in a while, however. But Josh Macuga is a staple of the Schmoedown. He competed in, like you said, the first Ultimate Schmoedown tournament.
You're right. And you know what? On most occasions, I do agree that the first 2 Ultimate Schmoedowns, they are completely separate beasts. But even then, you can see the passion that everyone had playing there. Mm-hmm. Like the numerous entrances everybody had, including Josh. Like looking at his matches against Harloff, Bonnie Somerville, and Mark Riley, how he was so into the theatric experience of it. I still love his match against Riley. He is coming out and he's doing the Rocky impressions. Like, and look, to everybody at home, yes. I rewatched 80% of Josh's matches from the Ultimate Schmoedown up to Season 5 of Collider. So trust me, I loved every entrance he does. But I'm going to tell you, I still love that entrance because, I mean, Josh, I could give you a top 5, top 7 rank of Josh Macuga's entrances, but But you can see in the Ultimate Schmoedown, the legend of Macuga began. I mean, let's just get off the bat of it. The Macuga magic. Him guessing an answer of something he's not seen or just out of nowhere, pretty much pulling the rabbit out of his hat. We all have to agree that the Macuga magic began in that Ultimate Schmoedown. But you know what? You both touched on it. So let's just talk about it. The Blue Fairy, for Christ's sake. I mean, everyone wants to talk about Roka's Bespin, but during those years of Collider, that Blue Fairy and Bespin, they were neck and neck with each other. Which one pissed off Harloff the most? Or which one pissed off Roka the most? But man, that match with the Blue Fairy, though, and it was funny because that was one of the first instances of a challenge. Because when Christian was confused at that answer, and then, of course, with Alicia and Mark having to tell Christian that he wasn't specific enough with the Blue Fairy because the Blue Fairy in Pinocchio had no name, but the Blue Fairies that were in Sleeping Beauty and in there was another Disney movie they were referencing too. But
Cinderella?
Cinderella. Yeah, Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty. They all had at least clarified names. The one in Cinderella, the fairy godmother, the Blue Fairy in Sleeping Beauty. She had a name. There was Floral, Fauna, and Merryweather. So I can't remember which one is the blue, which name goes to the Blue Fairy, but they had names, and it was and let's talk about that match itself, Macuga and Harloff in that Ultimate Schmoedown. You can actually, you know what? There's more to talk about when we get to Harloff. But even then, Macuga, as the fun-loving guy, he tried to alleviate tensions in that match because he wanted to keep the fun going. Mm-hmm. I'll bet Christian, who got very serious. But even then, at the end of that round 3, when they were betting, Macuga, out of nowhere, got the same answer as Harloff of Matthew Broderick and began the Macuga magic moving forward.
I love what he says. I've never even seen the movie, and Matthew Broderick is what came into my head. I thought that was... Macuga magic is the only. So great.
Macuga magic.
Yeah. But no, Josh Macuga had. If you look like right now, if you look back and you think some of the competitors that have been in the Schmoedown the longest, nobody brings up Josh Macuga because he's technically still involved. Because I believe he's on. He's not with Corruption because that's what.
No, he's with Swag.
Swag, yeah, because Winston said that he was planning on taking both of them, but Shannon, being the heel manager that she is, decided to take Dewberry and broke up the Wild Berries, and right there she should win Heel of the Year.
I was there. I was there at the awards show. I was in the crowd when Winston got Macuga, and of course. When Shannon came up and she had Wild Berries, at first I didn't think anything of it when she said Wild Berries for the crowd, and then all of a sudden looking back at it, like she was going to get Elliot. I yelled like I was like with other 60 people in that crowd booing Shannon because of that heel move she did. It just shows you, and that's something about the Wild Berries we're definitely going to touch on without a doubt. But as far as Macuga goes. It would have been amazing to see what Winston and Macuga would have done together if Macuga had gotten a chance to play in a match.
Yeah, unfortunately, Macuga got his food history TV hosting gig, which is awesome for him, by the way.
Yes.
When I saw that, I'm like, let's go. Congrats there, Josh. But it just means he's not able to compete in the Schmoedown, and let's be honest, Christian probably has other competitors he wants to see compete maybe more. That's why I feel like we haven't seen as much Macuga here the last couple seasons. Is there's just other competitors that Christian wants to get out there more than Josh. But if you look back when the show started, Macuga got a lot of matches. Macuga has played 30 matches to this point.
Yeah.
So he's one of the top ones.
Yeah. And
there's one match I would love to see with Macuga. Macuga versus the Flowers. A.K.A. Brett.
Brett. That would be an interesting match. The Wild Man versus the Sniper.
Yeah, I know they would have hyped that up on SCN just like they did with Bonnie and Brett on SCN. They were selling this match to the fans like hotcakes. Like it was a broken down card they had just restored, and it was kind of I would have loved it. You had a point there, Ben. Which also brings me to my idea of Macuga, where I wanted to touch on. I mean, we briefly chatted about it, but Macuga's ability as a player. I mean, yes, the Macuga magic was great, but as we can tell, looking back into the first season when it was the Collider era of seasons 3 and 4, Macuga, I would have to say, out of his overall ability to play, he was always. I mean, looking at all of his matches, I saw the most points he ever got out of round 1 was maybe 3 points before he started to make that comeback and see in round 2, because every match he played, when it was against Clark Wolf, against JTE, against Roca, against Harloff, and against Wolf again, he always came out with either 3 points the maximum and 1 point the minimum. But even then, his game did improve overall. I have to say, with the following later years. I mean, what about you guys? I mean, Ben, what would you?
I'll be honest, I didn't quite watch as many matches as you, but did you see the one he played Mike? He held in there pretty well. I forget what season that was, but that was when Mike was still face. He came out to a Flash Gordon theme song, which was funny. Because we all know what happened with that later on.
Was Macuga a bit of a was he a bit of a Nostradamus when he came out to Flash Gordon?
No, Mike came out to Flash Gordon.
Oh,
Mike,
sorry.
with a Flash Gordon shirt.
Oh my god.
It was funny.
I'm sorry. Yeah, that was one match I didn't rewatch yet. Sorry.
Josh was in there with Mike.
Yeah.
I mean, Mike took it away, but they were close for a chunk of it.
Until Mike
went back in season 4, and it wasn't even a close match. Mike won 17-6.
Yeah.
So.
But I know what you mean, Ben. Like off of the first round, right? He was holding pretty well.
Yeah.
And I'd say the same with his match against McWeeny. Like he had himself a very close match after the first round, but once that spinner's wheel happened, with Josh, the inverse of what his season of Collider was. Like normally in round 2, he makes that comeback, but you see here as Brandon had said of that knockout, and from what I saw of his match against McWeeny, he's not really faring well. I mean, he has limited number of strengths because he likes 80s, 90s, and sports movies. Mm-hmm. But it's pretty clear he's not a fan of animation. One thing's for sure, he damn sure hates horror movies. So
yeah, it's a gag that Christian did on Collider. It was so great, those videos.
Oh my god!
No, that's the Wild Berries. Touch on that later. But even then,
right. For some reason, for me, when I think Macuga, unfortunately, first of all, I think he competed in the first Ultimate Schmoedown Championship. That will always come to my head first. Second, Wild Berries. Like every memory I can think of for Macuga is Wild Berries. So it's really hard to we're not talking about that just yet. We gotta wait just a little bit.
No, we want to. Even some of you even though some of you in the chat, or some of you watching this video, you want us to talk about them Wild Berries. But I'm sorry, guys, we need to talk about Macuga because he was a very strong player. Because here's one thing about Macuga that people we overlook: rivalries. Let's talk about Schmoedown rivalries. I mean, because in Mance, we talked about that rivalry he had with Roca, with Bateman. But Macuga, in his Collider era, season 3 of Collider, he had rivalries with JTE, Finstock, Roca, and Merle. He's played Clark Wolf on 2 separate occasions, both going 1-1 against each other. So even though that wasn't more of a rivalry, it was more of a friendly rivalry of players. But if you look at how Christian loves to incorporate storylines, Macuga, Finstock, that freaking storyline that bled from season 3 into season 4.
They actually played each other, I think, 3 times or 2 times. him and Finstock, for me, knowledge-wise, I feel like they have the same strengths. 80s action, sports movies.
Don't forget, we forgot me, Malcolm Draco, as Finstock.
Yeah. So Kuga is kind of like a 2-0 against a Finstock, but two different versions, you should say. But it's like that. But Macuga, he's such a great personality, and he works so well with everybody that I loved how nobody has really anything bad to say about Macuga except, he's not the best player. I mean, because
knowledge-wise, yes. Knowledge-wise, he's not the best player, but entertainment value, there's no doubt Macuga belongs in the Schmoedown.
Yes. Entertainment is one. Go for it.
When you say the Wild Man is a top character in the Schmoedown?
I know his character name's the Wild Man, but it's probably mostly Josh Macuga. They just had to give him a moniker, so... But I feel like the Wild Man is Josh Macuga.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I do agree, Ben. If he had, it's hard to really find any other moniker for Josh Macuga because, God, it's just like even when he gets a question right, you can't help but notice that he loses his mind. Like he pulls something out of nowhere, or just even in a regular match, he just goes like, he gets a question Oscar movies and he has to pull it out. Boom! He jumps out of his chair, runs around the stage area, and then gets back to it just like at the top of his voice. But also, let's just talk about the Macuga magic, guys. Let's talk about the Macuga magic. For Christ's sakes, that's what he was mainly synonymous with before Wild Berries. When anyone, when Christian, Mark, Ken, anybody on that deck, they had to talk about that Macuga magic.
They really did. I don't know if he was the first one to pull what people now call a Bateman, where he knew the answer, but he liked to make people think that he didn't, and he pulls it at the last second, or was it truly he had no idea and it was throwing darts at a dartboard? Because sometimes with these competitors, like a lot of competitors do it now, where like they'll wait till like the last possible second to answer the question to make you think they don't know it. But I'm leaning towards with Josh. He legit did not know, and he just threw it out there. Matthew Broderick.
Ben, what about you? Regarding the Macuga magic, do you agree that was the Macuga magic more of like a play, like he knew the answer, but he was just messing with people, or like with Brandon, he literally just did not know and pulled it just out of nowhere?
I think it's a mixture of both. I mean, there was only so many times one person could get that lucky. Could it be legit? Yes. I think it's a little bit of both. I think he knew some. I just think he was great at acting, like, I don't know it. But then I could be wrong. I don't know. I mean...
No, it's a valid thing to say, man, because let's be honest. Macuga, he has... In some of his matches, he's always talking out the answer. He's talking himself to the answer. So that knowledge is there. I mean, when he knows something, he knows it. I'm of the opinion to where it's 90-10. 90% of the time, he does not know it. 10% of the time, he might, and he might play around with a bit. But he's not that good like Bateman or Roca or Mike or Chance to actually, be that convincing. Because let's be honest, when he doesn't know something, you can see it on his face. You see it in his body movement. He is not playing around when he does not know anything.
I know. And some competitors are that way. They don't beat around the bush. They're like, I don't know it, and there's no point to take the full 15 seconds or use a JTE to give myself more time. Because if you've never heard of the movie, you have no idea who it could be unless you have Macuga magic.
Exactly.
That may have to be a hashtag we use for this episode. Hashtag Macuga magic.
I like that.
You guys heard that? Hashtag Macuga magic. Last episode with hashtag Mance Media. Now we're continuing that alliteration of MM with Macuga magic.
Yes. It just so happens we aren't going to be able to do that every week because so far our first two competitors have an M at the beginning of their last name, so it works.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll try and do it with every competitor. Find some alliteration with their last name. That could be a nice little running thing that we have there. But
and also creatively, get our brains going talking about them. And since we all had to go through most of Josh Macuga's matches, let me ask you guys something. What match sticks out in the front and center in your mind as that's purely Josh Macuga? Not just him at his. Now, I'm not saying what's his best match or what match impressed you, but what match that clearly shouts to your head when people talk about Josh Macuga that you want to bring up first. Because personally, for me, the first match I kind of want to throw out there is his second match against Clark Wolf in the Ultimate Schmoedown tournament.
You broke up there, so can you just repeat what you said?
Oh, my bad.
No,
as I said, no, that's okay. When it came to Josh Macuga as a player, what match in your mind that if Josh Macuga came up to you, in a discussion of what match that you liked of theirs, what match would you say is purely just Josh Macuga at his best, not as a Schmoedown player, but just Josh Macuga, to where you would want to watch that match over and over again? Because personally, for me, that match is his second bout against Clark Wolf.
Yeah, I was trying to decide between the first or the second one with Clark Wolf. Because they have... That's another interesting rivalry you could say that Josh Macuga has is with Clark Wolf.
Yeah.
So it's definitely interesting. But unfortunately for me, every fantastic memory I have of Josh Macuga involves the Wildberries. So for this section, I can't.
Not there yet.
Yeah, we're not there yet, but I'm leaning towards, just because it was one of the first couple matches we got in the current era of the Schmoedown, is Clark Wolf, Josh Macuga 1.
Yeah. That is a good match. I do agree. That's a great match.
It's really interesting to go back and watch the promos for that, because they literally just went into the warehouse up against a white wall. So it wasn't. It is not what we have here today. But that's one of the things I love about the Schmoedown is there's several different eras. There's the Schmoes Know section on their podcast era. There's the Colada era. There's the we got Nerd Chronic to do these awesome promos era. And now we have the digital era. I feel like those are the different eras that you can tell there's a definite shift in how the show is presented throughout those 4 eras. Because if you look back, the promos before Nerd Chronic were there, you didn't feel it. You didn't get pumped like you do every week with Nerd Chronic. But that's one of the things I love about the Schmoedown is it's so different through different era. But I'm still leaning towards that first Macuga Clark Wolf match there. Now, it wasn't the big one there for the new era because it starts with Moral Campia.
Yeah,
it was still a really good, entertaining match. Clark Wolf pulls it out 17-15.
Yeah, and watching that match and the breakdowns I saw, this was just one of those instances where Clark was, she was coming out strong. She gets 5 points in that first round. Macuga follows by with 2. The second round, the choices of the wheels they got there. Clark Wolf, she was, even though people knew that she was a big horror fan, but one thing not many people knew that she's a big fan of Sandra Bullock. She was trying to aim to get that slice. She ends up getting Pauly Shore movies which thankfully we don't have that anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And she ends up doing
Well,
very good.
you know, like Pauly Shore? What's the problem with Pauly Shore?
I don't hate Pauly Shore. It's just that he was a certain flavor at a time. But when you rewatch his movies again, only 2 you can still say are pretty good, which is Encino Man and 2.5 because his small part in a Goofy movie, I Stand, and then the second one, what was it, Son-in-Law? I think he's okay in that one as well. Of course, Biodome. But even then, Biodome is kind of hard to rewatch because it's just like even now today. I'm just saying, today's time, it's hard to rewatch because that's dangerously close. So it's somebody like some scientists creating a biodome to live in for a year, and then you get 2 random idiots stuck in there, and it can just be another allegory of, just chaos and chaos just infecting, control or some shit like that. I'm sorry, but go right ahead, Ben.
I'm only messing with you.
So Ben, like Ryan was asking us there, what's the one singles match for Macuga if either you had to show someone or talk to Josh and tell him this is my favorite match that you've done?
Easy. It's Macuga versus Finn Draco. When the whole match was promoted as Finn Snock and Macuga. And you see Macuga come out, and then you see Finn Snock's turn come out.
Yeah.
And then you see the victim people. You see Tom Dagnino, and yet you see somebody in a Macuga mask. You don't know who it is.
Yeah.
He sits there.
That's the debut of actual Tom Dagnino because throughout all the Schmoes Knows podcast, he was always wearing that mask or he's always covering up his face. So that was like the first time he debuts without that mask. And it was from there.
The whole thing.
Yeah.
That was the whole thing. Finn Snock is just a mask. It can be anybody. But that was a fun match to watch. That was... And Macuga didn't have to play it. Well, that's how they set it up, but they gave him a way out. And nope, he played, and I believe he won.
Yeah, because look at that match. Back then, even though it was the season 4 era and they were using they were still doing the old set of rules, like the category. Yeah. You pick one category, then you get like 6 questions out of it. So season 4 was definitely that big transition from the 6 points of the categories into now the 8-point whiteboards that we're all very familiar with. So that's like one of the last few matches during that time, which is even more significant too because Josh only got 1 point out of that round, and then he does phenomenal by getting 7 points in the second round, 6 on his turn, and then stealing 1 point from Finn Draco. And then he's able to get his 3- and 5-pointer in that 5th round. And the 5-pointer was in Oscars, which surprising. I mean, oh my God. It was just like one of those Macuga magic words.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I know it was an Oscar question, but didn't it have something to do with Will Smith?
No, it didn't have nothing to do with Will Smith. It was the Oscar question was, what was the first nomination or win that William Hurt got in 1985? Right.
And there was Spider-Woman or something.
Yeah, Kiss of the Spider-Woman, yeah. And one of those instances where Macuga knew it, he was working himself through that and was able to pull it. And it was just like one of those what-if situations, because that was a retirement match, if I recall. It was one of those situations of storylines to what Christian loves to do. That storyline from when the Mega Powers broke up to Drake to Finstock realigning with JTE, forming the Lion's Den, Macuga on his own, and it was just like Macuga, like after he lost to Harloff, he called out Finstock, and it was that situation where the stars were just aligning so perfectly. It's like one of those storylines, the rivalry of like the unknown rivalry of Finstock and then Dagnino, Finstock, and Macuga you didn't know you wanted and worked out so well.
Hands off in Christensen and Macuga. Yeah. And what's your match?
Oh, well, I did say my match was Macuga and Wolf too, because
That's right.
yeah, but I didn't go too much in. The reason why I liked it is because that was Macuga, like definitely during his peak in the Collider area. I mean, look, I love what he did later in his career, but as far as a singles competitor, and I want to stress this out to everybody, we are mainly trying to talk about Josh as a singles competitor.
Yes, right now it is singles only,
Yeah.
and it's for me it's very difficult because I am definitely more of a Wildberry stan than I am a Macuga single stan. So it's I had to write down notes because I'm like singles notes because everything that comes to my mind is
breakdowns of all singles matches. I was doing breakdowns, like the categories he got questions in, which ones he got right and wrong, just so I can try to gather in my mind of him as a singles player.
But yeah,
it's been a long time. That's why we're covering him. So
yeah. Macuga has he may not have the most matches, but I'm pretty sure he's played in almost every season other than the current season.
Yes, that's correct.
There's not a lot of competitors that can say that. There is not a lot that say, "Oh, I've been there since the beginning." Let me just. So we got Knapsack probably.
Yes, he may have done like a variation, maybe not as a player, but he has been in there in every different variations, either as a single player, as a team player,
There's only one other person that probably has played a match in every season. Mark Yodi Riley.
Yeah.
Everyone else that competed in season 1, JTE, Cobster, Finstock, Knapsack, Harloff. A lot of them.
Yeah, Ellis.
According to the Schmoedown website, Ellis didn't have a match in season 1.
Oh no! Yeah, you're right.
I believe it was season 2.
You're right, because he was really on the desk in season 1.
No, Roca did not compete in
season 2. Roca and Merle made their debuts in season 2 of the team tournament.
So, yeah, they're now. I think that so Riley has that streak. He's competed in every season. I'm curious to see how long it goes. Maybe that's who we kind of go over next. But I feel like he's kind of near the top of potentially being on Mount Schmoedown, so I feel like we should save those for later. But Macuga that's an interesting question to ask. Because he's been involved since the beginning, he's had a match every season other than the current season.
Yeah.
What is his what's the word I'm looking for here? I guess what is his thing that he's left on the Schmoedown? Like how Mance, it was first player to have his face on a wheel slice.
I think I may have found it, and it was going over the Collider era, actually. But at the same time, it has to talk about his time in teams, so I'm going to have to hold off on that till we talk about him as a
the brakes.
Yeah.
Me too.
But as a singles player, to me, it's his entrances. And, I mean, but you know what? But then also it ties back to his Macuga magic, because even though if he's not there, the magic of pulling something that you don't know is a legacy on itself. It's just Josh Macuga is one of the first to be associated with that. Because let's be honest, we can go through so many Schmoedown matches to where players have pulled something out of nowhere, out of their butts. I mean, the next person I can see other than Macuga who has that magic, Stacey Howard. I mean,
you should ask Eric Zipper that question. He will agree with you 100%.
Yes. And even actually, Finstock himself, during the early years, he had that too. Like he was able to pull questions that nobody else did not think he knew. Especially when he was with JTE as Box Office Breakdown. And even Knapsack too. I think Knapsack had that magic as well, because I'm a big Shire Wolves fan, a Five Club fan. that first match of Shire was played against the Lions Den of Dagnito and Knapsack. Knapsack pulled answers to questions I didn't even think were possible that Knapsack knew.
Yeah.
So
I think people just associate him with Star Wars and figure those are the only movie trivia answers that he knows. But I think Knapsack, just in general, loves movies, so he probably has a lot of base knowledge.
Yes.
And he showed it off in that match.
So I'm guessing with Macuga. What about you? Is there something you think that of Macuga as a singles player that he's kind of left his mark on this league?
I'm just against Macuga magic.
Yeah.
No pulling that Master can answer. I think
I think I may have asked this question a little bit early because once we talk about teams, it'll be easy to find something that he's left on.
But as a singles player, it is a good one because for me, like I said, it's the because I said his entrances, he comes out like crazy. I mean, for crazy sakes, when at a time when so many people in the Collider era were starting to take this stuff seriously, like JTE, Roca, Wolf, and Merle, Macuga was always that guy who came out like, I don't care, I'm here to play, which is why I loved it when he came out to the Wild Thing music, or whenever he walked out there with like a bottle of whiskey in his hand and was just opening it up and just starts. Oh, I think I accidentally killed this. Dang it! There goes my thing for the wild berries. I just killed the last bottle of Jesus Christ.
Yeah. What?
Yeah, sorry. Go for it.
No. Yeah, for singles, for me, it's always going to be he competed in the first Ultimate Schmoedown Championship against Mark Riley. That's going to be his staple that he left on the league. Just like, I don't think we can use that for Riley because Riley had a more accomplished, I think, better singles career. So we don't have to use that for Riley. But I think Macuga, his thing that he left on the Schmoedown for singles is competed in the Ultimate Schmoedown Championship #1. He almost won it too. Like when you go back and watch that, the way they announce the winner, like they make it seem like
almost like he had a
like Macuga won that match. You're like, but then I think we're just so used to what Christian does or anyone on the desk does for the winner. Like they just make it huge. That one, it was like nice and calm. So like if you're going back and watching it kind of throws you off as to who the winner was. But,
because I'm looking back at some of the small breakdowns I've had. Like I wrote like small notes of like what they did in that match, and with Riley and Macuga. I mean, look at that match. There were definitely a couple of questionable calls in that match. And here's the thing: in that match with Riley too, when he loved scores and soundtrack, the way they did scores and soundtracks in that match.
Why can't they do that now? I would love if they did that now.
They had Riley listen to the soundtrack or the score in order to pull that off. And I agree. Ben, did you ever get a chance to see that match, Riley and Macuga in the Ultimate Schmoedown?
I think so. Yeah, maybe not. Go ahead.
No worry. Don't want to single you out or anything like that. I just want because I think Brandon brought up a great point. That's something they could definitely maybe bring back into the Schmoedown, maybe for exhibition matches. You know, for at least for scores and soundtracks.
No. Scores and soundtracks exhibition match, but I would rather they wait that for in studio because it'd be really hard to do it over StreamYard. But if they did that going forward with scores and soundtracks, I think we'd see it on the wheel a lot more. People wouldn't be afraid of it because I think a lot of people they will hear it and they'll know what movie. They just won't know the name of the composer, which a lot of composers' names are international, so they're really hard to pronounce and hard to spell. But I might have to post that in the group chat saying scores and soundtracks going forward. Can we just play the audio of like a track and you guess the movie? Like that would be.
And you were right. It would have to be limited to the studio only because it's in a controlled environment. They can be able to dictate how they do it. And I think that would be fantastic. That would be like an instant. It would be interesting to signal. It would be a way to single out certain slices to be their own thing. And yeah, if they did that, I'll go for it, Ben.
There might be a problem with that. I love that idea.
Oh, yeah, no.
But YouTube is so fucking annoying about copyright strikes.
Yeah.
Oh,
I just thought of that at when you said there might be a problem. Like, oh wait, copyright strikes. Because that's one reason
why Christians do original music. That's why Christians using original music for the players. Because in the time of the Schmoedown, they were using copywritten music either from movies or from artists or even heck.
The thing is, I think
they use wrestling music.
I believe it's either 5 seconds or 15 seconds you can use without it being a copyright strike. I'd have to look back and check, but you wouldn't.
But if you have multiple questions in a category, that means multiple songs. Doesn't that increase the likelihood? Maybe I'm wrong.
I believe it's every time you play it, it's either under 5 or 15 seconds. I'd have to check how fair use works, because you can use copyrighted material under fair use.
Yeah.
There are certain rules you have to follow with that. Like you can't.
Those rules need to be changed. Those rules need to be updated, honestly, because in this era, we have so many people doing reaction videos. And one thing, especially with movies, what garners attention faster now is people reacting to trailers or reacting to behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah, and if you look at any content creators who do those, a majority of the time they get flagged by the companies that release the trailers. Yeah.
Or when they do reviews of TV shows or movies. Like there's one YouTuber out there called Mr. Tars Reviews. He does reviews of Doctor Who episodes. He has had his stuff flagged so many times by the BBC Corporation because he's using clips from the show. And even though he has won his battles, is the fact that when they're flagged by YouTube, he has to wait 60 or 90 days to fight back. And YouTube is infamously known for not responding back to people or creators. They're always like, they will immediately respond to corporations. But when it comes to the YouTube creators who are trying to make their platform big, they are very slow to respond. But they do have a good point there. Yeah. I mean, especially even if they were allowed to use copywritten music, I think the way they did for multiple choice would be is that they would play the song at first. They didn't get it. Then I think it would just be multiple choice options, not like playing different songs. But I understand where you were going.
But no, I think if they didn't have that issue, I think you can only do it for scores and soundtracks. Don't do it for like movie quotes or anything else. Because if you can see the movie, you're going to be able to guess it. So that's the nice thing about audio is you're just hearing it.
Right.
Yeah, it is great stuff. That is good stuff to point out. And you know what? Talking about Macuga, about his match against Riley, this brings up to me something that, and I mean something that could have maybe, if this could have, I think this is as like a what if scenario. I don't mean let's fantasy book this stuff or fantasy draft this stuff, but what if Macuga did win that match? Because when I rewatched that Collider era, Riley only had 2 separate defenses against JTE and Merle. If Macuga had won that match, let's dictate he goes up against JTE defending that championship. And let's say JTE wins. JTE's trajectory after losing to Riley was him, and after box office breakdown, losing the Schmoes, it led to JTE becoming Little Evil. It led to JTE getting that mockumentary, and then the formation of the Patriots. So let's say he fought against Josh Macuga. Macuga, the first ever Schmoedown singles champion, and then he wins. What happens there? Do we still get that mockumentary? Do we still get the Patriots? I mean, maybe we get the Patriots because it was a fallout of box office breakdown, but there are certain situations, I think, with Macuga where if he had won a certain match, there could have been ripple effects down the Schmoedown. And this match is like one of the first, I think, in my mind.
That would be an interesting what-if match for Christian to do is what if Macuga won the Ultimate Schmoedown #1 instead of Riley?
Yes.
Are we talking about Macuga in the sense of how we talk about Riley right now, where Riley is considered? I love how Riley's like, no, not happening.
It's really because it's not like I don't think Macuga and Riley on the same level. It's just that I watched the decision episode because I want us to talk about Clark Wolf. And it was clear to me that Wolf and Riley have a great camaraderie with each other, that even if he wasn't the champion, I think they still would have been partners.
Well, both of them, they love horror. So I think that's really where their chemistry worked the best.
Yeah.
But
I'm sorry for interrupting you, man. Go right ahead.
Macuga, we all know how Macuga feels about horror. So yeah, I think you're right on that one. But it's just interesting to think about what could have happened if Macuga won the first Ultimate Schmoedown.
Yeah.
So.
Because, like I said, the ripple effects were there. Because when Riley and Dan were champions, I mean, they were team partners in the Ultimate Schmoedown too. They were called team champs. Like, that could have changed Riley's trajectory as well. Like, Riley and JTE could have been the most affected by that. I mean, if you just did that slightly, kind of like in comic book movies, whenever they like do those what if storylines and they give you that one single issue, like Flashpoint, like with Superman, there's the nail to where Superman was never found by Ma and Pop, found by Jonathan and Martha Kent.
Mm-hmm.
Or Bruce Wayne's parents had survived the being killed in Park Row. It's just like Macuga brings up, and you know what? That was a talking point I wanted to talk about. What would Josh Macuga would have been like if he had been the first ever movie trivia Schmoedown champion, or would he have ever had the potential to become a champion?
Yeah, could he have defended the belt if he had won? Do we think that Macuga could have? I mean, we don't know if it would have been JTE. Could have been someone else. Like, that's the thing. You change one little thing, everything after that could be completely different. I personally think at that time, JTE was still fairly new. His knowledge was not the best at that time. So I think Macuga and JTE were probably pretty on the same knowledge level. So depending on what they got, it's possible that Macuga could have defended against JTE. Now the next one, no way in hell in season 2 could Macuga beat what we now know as the GOAT, Dan Murrell. There's no way. Nothing against you, Macuga. Nothing whatsoever.
No, we love
Dan
you,
Murrell
man.
could beat you in his sleep. Dan Murrell could beat you in his sleep. You could have him be blindfolded with his hands tied behind his back, because we weren't using whiteboards in seasons 1 and 2.
No, they weren't.
I don't even think they used them in season 3, if I can remember.
No whiteboards. It was pretty much the 6 cat. It was the you pick group 1 or 2. You go for a second, and it's A or B, and then you're given 3 questions. The six questions. They didn't even use whiteboards for the round 2 or 3. So yeah, hands tied behind his back, blindfolded, and
he still beats Macuga.
Yes,
let's be honest. He still beats Macuga.
Then what about you?
Do you think he could beat Guy? Could Macuga beat every Guy?
No. I think Guy's base knowledge is far more than Macuga's base knowledge. Nothing against Macuga, but for Macuga, unless it's 80s action or 80s movies or sports movies, I don't think
he has been with action, adventure, and fantasy sci-fi, but even then, within those small little niches, like he would need to get really lucky. Like if we ever had Guy versus Macuga, it's pretty much coming down because look, as much as people want to talk about Guy's victories against Riley and Murrell, his ability to play has not, as a singles player, Guy has not changed as a player. He has not changed as a singles player.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, I was going to say, if you suggest he could beat, Macuga could beat Guy, then I could say, potentially.
Yeah.
Potentially. Luckiest game ever, he could beat Dan. But so many things would have to go right for that to happen. No way he can make that.
I think it would be entertaining to watch back then if we could have seen Macuga Merle. Right now, I don't think it would be as fun just because Dan right now Dan is very. I can't find the words to describe Dan right now. He has embraced the character aspect. He's good at cutting promos. We know what his name is.
Oh, what's it?
His latest promo, the one I guess yesterday, it was on fire. He looked great at it.
Yeah, he's gotten really good at that, like the last 2 seasons.
Actually, the thing with Macuga, he's also been very good at promos, I will say.
Yeah.
Entertainment value. Like, he has, like, great one-liners. Like, I wrote this down. After he had beaten JTE, he wrote down that after he beat JTE, he said that, oh, wait, hold on. That's JTE. Wait, it's on Wolf 2. Yeah, he said when he beat JTE, my favorite quote he said was like, I beat JTE. Now he's outside of a Walmart begging change for a bus ticket to get home.
Yeah, Macuga has. There are some competitors that I think enjoy cutting promos more than the actual competing. And I'm completely fine with that. I love watching these competitors cut these promos. Like, I just get so pumped and I laugh my ass off so much. Seeing a Macuga Merle match would have been really interesting.
Yeah. Speaking of
sorry.
No, you go right ahead. Keep going.
There is one thing nobody has brought up yet, and I want to bring up real quick.
Floor is yours.
Macuga and Cody's fantasy updates after each match.
That's right.
Actually, that's what Josh Macuga has left on the Schmoedown.
Yes.
Fantasy updates. And then he started doing them with Cody Hall, and those were just as entertaining.
All the different variations of it were fantastic. Like, he would have Cody tossing him mics back and forth, or Cody, I think Costner in the back were doing like their own little like 90s boy band or like R&B style type in the background. Yeah, you are absolutely right, Ben. I can't believe I didn't think of that. I guess it's just
after updates. Yeah, that completely slipped my mind. Josh Macuga fantasy updates. We need to get those back. Hopefully we can get those in season 8.
Especially now in this community. In this community, there are fantasy leagues amongst this Schmoedown community. I'm
trying to just figure out how that works. Like, I talked to several people where they're in a Schmoedown fantasy league. I'm like, how does that work? Like, how do you decide the point values?
Well,
like, is it just you pick a winner, and if you have that winner in that match?
That is a good point.
It sounds more of a pick'em league than but that's just me.
I know the way in my group, the way we did a normal draft where we picked 5 players, regardless if they're singles or teams or Inner Geekdom or Star Wars. We picked 6 players, and then, especially now with managers were the 7th slot. And then we had the opportunity to either drop players and then bring in new ones or trades and all that. And my guy in charge, Jonathan, he's very smart, did a great job. What it wasn't point values is that depending on how the person won, you would either get an automatic. I would need to look at that point breakdown again. But let's say I had in a match this past Star Wars tournament. I had no Star Wars players except for Alex Damon, and since he wasn't playing, and everybody in my group were picking Star Wars players left and right. So out of desperation, I picked Ace Cabrera.
I bet you're loving that.
Yeah, I know. But at first, I wanted to get Ken Knapsack, but then he got taken. I wanted to get Laura. I wanted to get Laura Kelly, but she was taken too. And I liked Sean Sullivan, but I just didn't seem as strong yet, and someone already picked Witt. So I'm like, you know what? After Ace beating Cabeza.
Ace got looked over by everybody in every situation, and it's fantastic.
And go for it.
I'm going to call it right here. Ace is going to meet Alex.
I don't know. I think the reason why Ace was so good in that Star Wars tournament is he got in a rhythm. He basically just kept playing week after week after week. Yes. I don't know if the time off is going to help him or hurt him. But it also, Alex hasn't competed in a match in some time. He hasn't competed in a Star Wars match.
Yeah.
And like I think the last one.
It was at the Spectacular.
Was that Spectacular last year against Laura Kelly? So,
I mean,
that could hurt him as well.
I mean, he may have been. He's definitely. I'm pretty sure, even though he's not studying with Molly, I know that he has done some training sessions with her. I know he's been playing along to some of the Star Wars matches like Ken did before he played up against Ace. But yeah, I think Ace he got beneficial because if you see in his past, he was on Collider with Ken and Emma Fyffe with Jedi Council. So he was already on a platform where he was talking about something he loved. And when Ace did get picked, I'm like, at first when I got Ace, I was thinking, oh, I just need points. But then after you've beaten Ken, I remember him watching him in Jedi Council. He's passionate about Star Wars. So I thought in his match against Laura, it would go down to the 5-pointer and Laura would win. But man, after that one question missed, I'm like, this could be Ace's match to win or lose. And it just kept going and going and going. And
Ace.
Yeah, but that's the best part about Macuga, that fantasy update. Because if it wasn't for that, the fantasy updates and people creating fantasy leagues, we would have never gotten this opportunity to believe in upsets, to believe in finding someone you like and sticking with them to the end. I mean, God, fantasy Macuga, for Christ's sake, fantasy guy.
I'm sorry. I feel like I really want to hold him down with that.
So yeah, no. I'd say for singles, even though it has nothing to do with him competing, fantasy updates is Josh Macuga. If you have asked any longtime fan, what is one thing you associate with Josh Macuga that is not the Wild Berries? You have to make sure to state not Wild Berries.
Not Wild Berries, not Macuga magic. Like, really,
what does come to your mind? And I can almost bet you a majority of them will say fantasy updates.
Okay.
So,
that is great. But
that is one thing we are trying to do with each competitor is find one thing that they've left on the league to basically say why they should eventually belong on Mount Schmoedown. More like Schmoedown Hall of Fame. Because let's be honest, every year it's going to change, especially with all these competitors coming in and out. So
it's one of those reasons why with Mount Schmoedown, I like to think of our Mount Schmoedown as in the terms of Greek mythology of Mount Olympus. Because of Mount Olympus, you have the Greek gods, and almost you have like your top. There's like in Mount Olympus in Greek mythology, there's always 12 or 10 gods on that mountain. You had the big three of Zeus, Poseidon, and Athena. But then you had all the other middle tier gods. Like you had sometimes Hades was there. You had Hera. You had Hermes or Apollo, Artemis. So that's why I like this idea is that we'll have our top, the best. But within our mountain, there's always other competitors who can carve a niche in that corner there. But I agree with you. Most of the time, this does feel like mainly just a Hall of Fame. Who's going to be the first inductee? I'd put Macuga as the first inductee for our Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I think Mount Schmoedown is the name of the Schmoedown Hall of Fame. Don't call it like Schmo's Hall of Fame. I think it should be called Mount Schmoedown. And so far, our first two recipients have been Movie Dates Mike Mance and Macuga Magic Josh Macuga fantasy update. So
yes.
Unfortunately, everyone, this will end up being a two-parter as we are approaching kind of our limit here that we want for our episodes here, and we just talked singles there for Josh Macuga. We will be back at another time talking about Wild Bears.
Wild Bears.
Wild Bears.
And
we will go over the amazingness that is Wild Berries. So just kind of pay attention to our social media, which is down there at the bottom, twitter.com/Mount Schmoedown. We did launch a Twitter. You'll be able to find us there also on there. We will have the link to the YouTube channel in the bio, so just go ahead and click that, hit subscribe. We would appreciate that very much.
Yeah.
Also, if you're liking this, make sure to like the video as well. Any parting thoughts for today's episode, fellas?
Ben, you got any parting thoughts for us?
Nope. Hashtag, Macuga Manhunt.
Yes. To reiterate, spread the hashtags. You watched our Mance episode, keep spraying on Mance Media. Get that attention on the SCN, so we want Scott Mance back as a manager. With Macuga, hashtag Macuga Magic. You know, these hashtags, we want them not to just associate with us, but something you guys can use as a banner to get behind.
So, parting thoughts, Ryan?
No, I mean, to be honest, we're going to talk wild berries so much. So I'm definitely looking. I might have to raid my parents' liquor cabinet for another bottle of whiskey for that one. But other than that, wild berries. But
Whiskey Man Macuga. That's another name people had.
The OG Whiskey Man. Sorry, Jim.
No. OG Whiskey Man is the amazing Josh Macuga. Always had fun here, fellas, talking about the Schmoedown and one of, for me, the most entertaining players to watch in a match, Josh Macuga. We will see you in our next episode.